back, everyone. If you've been with us through the earlier sessions of our content course, you've already done the hard work of thinking about what you want your content to do and who it's meant to reach. Today, we're going to add another layer on top of that, and it's one that most small practices skip entirely. Not because it's complicated, because it feels like it's something you do once and check it off the list. It's not. A content strategy isn't a document that you create and file away. It's a living system. Your practice changes, your patients and your clients change. The platforms that they use to find you change. A strategy that doesn't move with all of that stops working, quietly, gradually, and usually without anyone noticing until the phone has been slower than usual for the last 6 months. Today is about building the habits that keep your content aligned with where your practice actually is, not where it was 2 or 3 years ago when you first put your website together.
If you've been with us through strategy, planning, craft, and guardrails, you know how to define why content exists. You know how to plan for the right reader. You know how to write with clarity and structure. And you know how to run every piece through a guardrail check before it goes anywhere near your audience. Refinement is the phase that most content efforts never reach, not because it's difficult, but because it feels like optional extra credit after the main work is done. It isn't. Refinement is what separates content that compounds over time from content that slowly becomes invisible. A well-crafted page that nobody updates is eventually a page that nobody finds. Today, you'll learn how to monitor what's working, how to identify what's quietly stopped working, and how to update and refresh your content systematically without rebuilding from scratch every time something changes.
Most small practices we see at Foster fall into one of two camps. The first is the practice that never had a formal content strategy to begin with. Content went up when there was time. The website got built once, but it hasn't been touched since. Social posts happen in bursts, usually when someone on the team has a spare 20 minutes or feels a vague guilt about not having added to their social media channels in a while. The second camp looks different on the surface, but it ends up in the same place. Someone, maybe you, did the initial work. You thought about your audience, you wrote pages for your key services, and maybe you even hired someone to help. The strategy existed, it was reasonable, and it worked for a while. But then the practice kept moving and the content didn't. The pages you wrote 3 years ago still describe a version of your practice that has since evolved. The blog posts reference guidelines that have since been updated. The homepage speaks to the patient population you are trying to reach before you shifted your focus. Both of these situations have the same problem: content that doesn't connect. And here's what makes that problem easy to miss. It doesn't announce itself. Your website isn't going to send you an alert when a page becomes outdated. Google won't notify you when a shift in search behavior has quietly moved your content off the first page. You don't get a phone call telling you that the person who would have been your ideal client found your website, couldn't figure out what they needed, and left. The disconnect is invisible until you go looking for it, and most practices never take the time to look. That's what today is all about: learning to look, learning what to look for, and building a simple, sustainable process for keeping your content aligned with where your practice actually is.
Your patients and clients have changed what they're searching for and how they want to receive the answer. A few years ago, the search behavior of most people looking for a lawyer or a doctor was fairly simple. They typed in a service and a location: family lawyer near me, or cardiologist in city, primary care doctor accepting new patients. The intent was straightforward: find someone, check their credentials, call the office. That behavior still exists, but it's no longer the whole picture, and it's no longer where the most valuable search traffic lives. Searches have gotten more specific and more conversational. People are now typing full questions into Google the way they would ask a knowledgeable friend. What happens to my pension in a divorce in Ohio? Can I sue my landlord for a mold problem? Do I need a referral to see a cardiologist on my insurance plan? Is it normal to feel dizzy after starting blood pressure medication? This shift shift happened for a few reasons. Voice search made conversational queries feel natural. People got used to asking Siri or Alexa full questions and carried that habit into typed searches. Google got better at understanding intent rather than just keywords, which rewarded more specific queries with better results. And frankly, people have become more informed consumers of both legal and medical services. They're doing more research before they ever pick up the phone. What this means for your practice is significant. If your website only speaks in general terms, we handle family law matters, or we offer comprehensive primary care, you are invisible to the person typing a specific question. Your page may technically exist, but it's not answering what they asked, so Google won't surface it and they'll never find you. The practices that are winning in search right now are the ones whose content directly mirrors the questions their ideal clients and patients are actually asking. And here's where attention spans enter the picture. Even when someone does find your content, you have less time to hold their attention than you did 5 years ago. This is not speculation, it's a measurable behavioral shift. Average time spent on a web page has been declining. People scroll faster. They skim before they commit to reading. They make a judgment about whether a page is worth their time within the first few seconds of landing on it. This has been driven by several converging forces. Smartphones have made content consumption into a constant ambient activity. People are reading on a treadmill, in a waiting room, between meetings. Social media has trained us to process information in very short bursts. And the sheer volume of content available online means that if something doesn't immediately signal its relevance, the back button is right there. For lawyers and healthcare providers, this creates a real tension. Your subject matter is often genuinely complex. You cannot responsibly reduce a nuanced legal question or a clinical explanation to 3 bullet points without sacrificing accuracy. And yet, if your content is a wall of dense, unbroken text instead of being structured for how people read, a meaningful percentage of your audience will leave before they get to the part that would have convinced them to call you.
Your practice has evolved. And if your content hasn't evolved with it, you're not just missing opportunities, you're actively working against yourself. Think about what that actually looks like in practice. A family law attorney who spent the first decade of their career handling everything, divorces, custody disputes, adoptions, property settlements, gradually realizes that custody cases are where their deepest expertise lies, where they do their best work, and where they want to build their reputation. So they make the shift. They stop taking general family law cases. They position themselves as a custody specialist. They invest in continuing education. They join the right professional associations, and they build referral relationships with the right people. And then someone searches custody attorney in their city, lands on their website, and reads a homepage that still says, "We handle all aspects of family law." The disconnect is immediate. The person who is looking for a specialist, someone who lives and breathes custody disputes, has just landed on a page that reads like a generalist. The credibility that took years to build in the real world is essentially invisible online because that content never caught up. And this problem can cut the other way too. When a practice adds a service line, a law firm that starts adding estate planning alongside its existing litigation work, or a medical practice that adds a new diagnostic service or expands into telehealth, the content often lags 6 months to a year behind the actual capability. Potential patients and clients who would have been a perfect fit never find out that the service exists because there's nothing on the site for them to find. This matters for 2 distinct reasons, and both of them are significant. The first is search relevance. Search engines review content based on how well it matches what someone is looking for. A page that's written for a general family law audience is not going to rank for someone who is searching for a custody specialist. The keywords are different, the questions that should be answered are different, and the intent behind the search is different. Generalist content is going to compete with every other generalist in your market. Specialist content has a much narrower field to compete in, and it attracts exactly the type of person you want. The second factor is trust. When someone lands on your website, they're making a fast, largely unconscious judgment about whether or not you are the right person for their specific situation. A page that speaks directly to their problem, not family law in general, but the particular complexity of a custody dispute involving a parent who has relocated, signals expertise in a way that a general overview never can. That's what converts a visitor into a caller. Content alignment isn't a one-time fix. Every time your practice makes a meaningful shift, adding a new focus area, a new service, serving a new patient population, or changing the types of cases or conditions you want more of, your content strategy needs to move with it. The version of your practice that exists on your website should match the version that exists in real life. When those two things are out of sync, every piece of content you have is going to be working for the wrong version of you.
The platforms have also shifted, and Google is the biggest shift of all. 3 years ago, if you had a well-optimized page on your website answering a common question, say, what is a retainer fee for a lawyer, or what are the symptoms of high blood pressure, there was a reasonable chance that page would show up near the top of Google search results and people would click on it. That game has changed significantly. Google has introduced what they call AI overviews, those AI-generated summaries that now appear at the very top of many search results, above all the traditional links. When someone searches, what should I do after a car accident, or can stress raise your blood pressure, Google now often answers that question directly on the results page, pulling from multiple sources and summarizing the answer in a paragraph or two. For the person searching, this is convenient. For you as a content creator, it means they may get their answer without ever clicking through to your website at all. This is called a zero-click search, and it's becoming increasingly common. Studies suggest that a significant and growing percentage of Google searches now end without the user clicking any link whatsoever. So what does this mean for your practice? It means the bar for getting a click has risen, but it hasn't disappeared. People still click. They click when they want more detail than the summary provides. They click when they want a local expert, not a generic answer. They click when they're ready to make a decision, not just gather information. They click when they trust a specific source or name they recognize. This is actually good news for lawyers and healthcare providers if you understand how to position your content correctly. Here's what still works and what you need to do differently. First, generic informational content is now the hardest type to compete with. If your blog post is essentially answering a question that Google's AI can now summarize in 3 sentences, that post is not going to drive much traffic anymore. A post titled, What is a deposition, or What causes high cholesterol, written at a general level, is increasingly redundant. Google's AI does that now. What AI cannot replicate is your specific expertise, your local knowledge, and your direct relationship with your audience. So the content that still earns clicks and earns trust is content that goes deeper, gets more specific, or reflects a perspective only you can offer. Second, content that builds a relationship over time is increasingly valuable, precisely because AI summaries are transactional. Your email newsletter, your consistent social media presence, your regular blog that patients and clients actually subscribe to, these create an ongoing connection that a one-time Google search never will. The practices that invest in building an audience, not just attracting search traffic, are the ones that will be most resilient to ongoing search algorithm changes. Third, getting your content cited as a source matters more now. Google's AI overviews pull from sources it considers authoritative and trustworthy. While you can't control whether Google cites you, you increase your chances by having accurate, well-structured, clearly attributed content on your site, content that demonstrates genuine expertise. This means citing sources when you reference clinical guidelines or legal standards. It means having an about page that clearly establishes your credentials. It means using clear headings and plain language so your content is easy to parse. These are all signals that Google uses to evaluate trustworthiness. Of course, Google isn't the only platform that's shifted, just the most impactful for most practices. If you've been using Facebook to reach patients or clients, You've likely noticed that organic reach, the number of people who see your post without you paying to promote them, has dropped substantially over the past several years. Facebook's algorithm increasingly prioritizes content from friends and family over business pages. That doesn't mean Facebook is useless for your practice, but it does mean that a strategy built entirely on free Facebook posts is less effective than it used to be. LinkedIn, on the other hand, has seen growing organic reach over the past few years, particularly for professional content. For attorneys especially, LinkedIn can be a meaningful channel for reaching referral partners, other lawyers, financial advisors, therapists, real estate agents who can send you business. A short post sharing a perspective on a recent legal development in your area of practice can reach hundreds of the right people with no advertising spent. YouTube and short form video continue to grow as search surfaces. People increasingly search YouTube the same way they search Google, typing in questions and looking for answers. A short video of you answering the 5 most common questions you get asked, filmed on your phone in your office, can rank in YouTube search and build trust in a way that text alone cannot. You don't need production quality. You need to show up as a credible, approachable expert.
Thank you, Jen. This is such a good point. And all of this, essentially, what it comes down to is that your goal is not to game the algorithm. Your goal is just to be genuinely useful and findable to people who need what you offer. When you focus on that, the algorithm will tend to follow. Okay. All right. So you don't need expensive tools or a marketing analyst to stay on top of trends. Some of the free low-cost methods that we recommend. The first one on this list here is Foster's SEO tool. If you have a website with us, this tool is going to show you exactly what searches are bringing people to your site, and more importantly, what keywords you're showing up for but not ranking well on. It's a direct window into what your potential clients and patients are searching for. If you need help using our tool or would like to obtain access, you can contact our customer service. The second one on our list here is Google Trends. If you go to trends.google.com and type in topics that are relevant to your practice, you can see whether interest in a topic is rising or falling and what related topics are growing. For example, a mental health therapist might search therapy for burnout and discover that searches have increased significantly in the past 2 years, which would be a clear signal to create content around that topic. Answer the Public is another great resource. If you type in a topic, this tool will show you all of the questions that people are searching around it. For a healthcare provider, for example, typing in high blood pressure generates dozens of content ideas. Can high blood pressure cause headaches? High blood pressure treatment without medication? High blood pressure and exercise. Each of these is going to be a blog post or an FAQ that's waiting to happen. Your waiting room and inbox can also be great sources of content ideas. The questions your patients and clients ask you before, during, and after appointments are more valuable than any trend report. Start keeping a running note on your phone. Every time someone asks you something that you've answered before, write it down. That list can be turned into your content calendar. Local bar associations and medical associations also regularly publish updates on regulatory changes, emerging issues, and shifts in standards of care. If you follow these communications, you can turn timely updates into educational content for your audience.
Those are great points, Dana. And I would just add that once you have your ideas, an easy way to come up with keywords is to use the Surfer SEO Chrome extension. And then as you search, the keywords will just appear on the right side of your screen.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jen. I love that extension, especially as I'm writing, if I'm trying to decide between 2 different ways for how to talk about a topic.
Yeah,
it's an easy way
agreed.
to determine what other people are using.
You don't need a lot of content to have a successful content strategy. You need the right content performing well. Data helps you figure out which is which. Let's keep this simple and practical. There are 3 numbers every small practice should track. The first is website traffic by page. Most practices find that their homepage and a handful of service pages get the vast majority of traffic. But look beyond those. Which blog posts or articles are getting consistent traffic? Those topics are resonating with your audience. Create more like them. Number two, where your traffic is coming from. Are people finding you through Google search, through a specific referral source, through social media? This tells you where your content is working. If 80% of your traffic comes from organic search, your blog and SEO optimized content are doing the heavy lifting. Invest there. If you're getting meaningful traffic from a specific referring website, that's a relationship worth nurturing. And third, what people do when they get to your site. Do they visit multiple pages or do they land and leave? Do they click your phone number or contact form? Google Analytics can show you this. A page that gets a lot of traffic but almost no contact clicks might have a content problem. It's attracting people but not converting them. For lawyers specifically, track which practice area pages generate the most contacts, form submissions, or calls. That tells you where your content is most persuasive and where you have the opportunity to improve. For healthcare providers, track which condition or service pages drive appointment requests. If your page on a particular treatment gets consistent traffic but no appointments, the content may not be clearly explaining what the next step is. Our tip for you is to set aside 20 minutes once a month to look at these numbers. You don't need a dashboard or a report. Just look at your top pages and your traffic sources and ask yourself, what is this telling me? Write down one thing to change or test for the next month.
A content audit is something that sounds intimidating, but for a small practice, it's actually very manageable. Most small practices don't have hundreds of pages of content on their site. And with AI tools now available to assist with this process, what used to take a full weekend can realistically be done in a focused afternoon. Let me walk you through the process and I'll show you exactly where AI fits in at each step. Our first step is going to be to make a list of everything you've published. This is every page on your website, every blog post, article, every video. You can create a simple spreadsheet with 4 columns: the URL, the topic, the date published, and the performance. You can pull this data from Google Analytics, or you can also do a full site content export in DSS. Step 2 in your content audit is going to be asking yourself 4 questions about each piece. Is this information still accurate? This is especially critical for legal and healthcare content because outdated information damages credibility and can cause real harm. The second question is, does this reflect what my practice currently does and who I currently serve? Question number 3 is this the kind of content that attracts the patients or clients that I want? And then the final question is going to be, is there a clear next step for the reader? And that can be a way to contact you, a way to book an appointment, or just an offer form to request an ebook or a resource to help them learn more. AI can help you with this by summarizing pages. Instead of reading every piece of content yourself and making these judgments one by one, you can copy the text of a page into your favorite AI tool and give it a prompt that says something like, you are helping a family law attorney audit their website content. Review this page and tell me, is the information still likely to be current and accurate? Does it have a clear call to action? Is it specific enough to attract a serious potential client? What would you recommend? Keep it as is, update it, or remove it. If you do this for every page, AI won't give you a perfect answer each time, and it absolutely cannot verify your content's legal or medical accuracy. However, it is going to give you a useful first pass assessment that dramatically speeds up your review. Think of it as a first reader who pre-sorts your content so you can make faster, more informed final decisions. In step 3, after we've reviewed the content, you're going to keep each piece sorted into one of 3 buckets. Keep as is content is content that's accurate, relevant, and currently performing very well. Update is content that's on the right topic, but it needs some refreshing. It might need new statistics, it might need updated legal standards, or it might need to include links to current treatment guidelines. Remove or consolidate is content that's outdated, off-brand, or so thin that it's doing more harm than good for your search rankings.
Those are really good points, Dana. And I just need to chime in with something on thin content, especially if you've had content on your site for a long time. If you have a page with 150 words about a practice area you barely offer anymore, it's not helping you. Google penalizes sites with a lot of low quality thin content. Fewer better pages almost always outperform a larger volume of weak ones. AI can help you quickly bulk up thin pages with genuinely useful information. But again, review everything before you make it live.
That's a really good point. And I'd like to say that the standards for what we recommend for content length are constantly changing. You may have content on your site that was written by the Foster team from several years ago. That's in the 300 to 400 word range. That was the recommended best practices at the time, but as Google evolves, that content length evolves, and that's why it's so important to conduct that content audit.
Yep, and those topics may still be great. You may have something basic like compensation after a car accident that people really want to know about. You just need to add to it.
Updating that is going to be a really high return on your investment. You can do your content audit. What we recommend is about once a year. Block out a Saturday morning, open your spreadsheet, open an AI tool in another tab, and just work your way through your pages one by one. Use your AI to do the first pass analysis and then draft any rewrites. Use your own expertise to verify the accuracy and make the final decisions. Creating a feedback loop can help you improve the quality of your content. And the good news is that some of your best content intelligence is already available to you. It's just not being captured in any useful way. Your first resource that you really want to take advantage of is going to be your front desk or intake coordinator. The person who answers your phones and handles new inquiries is going to hear the same questions over and over. Sit down with them for 20 minutes and ask, what do people always want to know before their first appointment? What misconceptions are coming up? What makes people hesitant to book? Every answer that they give you is going to be a new content idea. New client and patient intake forms. If your intake form asks, how do you find us, which it should, review those responses quarterly. You're going to learn which channels are actually driving new business versus which ones you're investing in without return. Post-visit or post-consultation surveys sent after your initial meeting can surface valuable feedback. Ask if anyone found the information they needed on the website before coming in. Was there anything that they wish they knew beforehand? Would they be willing to refer a friend or colleague to your office? You can use tools like Google Forms or SurveyMonkey to make this free and simple to set up. Online reviews. You want to read your Google reviews, not just to feel good about the positive ones, but to mine them for language. For example, when a patient writes, I finally found a doctor who explains things clearly, that's telling you that your educational communication is a strong differentiator for your practice. Use that. However, when someone leaves a less than positive review mentioning confusions about one of your processes, that's a content gap that you should be addressing. And last on our list here is your own observations. After you've had a particularly good consultation where the client seemed really well prepared, ask them if they read anything on your website that was helpful. If there's a consultation where someone seems confused about the basics, make a note of what they didn't know. All of your observations are going to be data that improves your content strategy.
So once you have that feedback, it's time to put it into a content calendar. Here's a workflow that pulls everything together. Once a month, collect your raw feedback from all of these sources, front desk notes, intake form responses, survey answers, review themes, your own observations, and paste them all into a single AI prompt. A prompt may be something like, I'm a type of practitioner running a small practice. Here's a collection of feedback, questions, and observations from my patients or clients this month. Based on all of this, suggest a content plan for next month. 3 to 5 specific content ideas with a suggested format, a working title, and a 2-sentence description of what each piece should cover. Prioritize ideas that address confusion, build trust, or answer questions people have before their first appointment. What you get back is a monthly content calendar built entirely from real intelligence gathered from real people, not trends you read about, not topics a marketing agency suggested, but the actual questions and concerns of your specific audience. That is an enormous competitive advantage, and it costs you nothing but the time it takes to gather the raw material.
For lawyers and healthcare providers, brand consistency carries extra weight. Your clients and patients are making high stakes decisions about their health, their families, and their finances. Trust is the real currency of your practice. Every piece of content you put out is either going to help build trust or erode it. This doesn't mean you can't evolve. It just means that when you evolve, you need to do so deliberately. Your professional tone, your commitment to accuracy, and your core values as a practitioner are going to be your non-negotiables. A personal injury attorney should always sound authoritative and empathetic, not casual and flippant, even if they start experimenting with short-form video. A pediatrician should always be warm, evidence-based, and reassuring, even if they start writing for a new audience of teenage patients rather than just the parents of young children. If you want to try something new, a different format, a new platform, or a different content topic, we recommend that you test it in a low-stakes way first. Try posting 3 reels on Instagram before you commit to it as a channel. Write 2 long-form LinkedIn articles before you decide to make a LinkedIn content pillar. You don't need a style guide is great, but you don't need a 40-page brand document. Simply write down your practice's tone in 3 words, 3 things you always do in your content, 3 things you never want to do, and the disclaimer language that you should always include. That's going to be enough to maintain consistency across everything that you publish.
Okay. The biggest barrier for small practice isn't knowledge, it's time. So let's build a planning rhythm that fits into a real schedule. Annually, you can set aside 2 hours at the start of each year or whenever your practice's natural planning season is. Review your business goals for the year. Do your content audit. Identify 2 or 3 content priorities, a new service you want to promote, a patient demographic you want to reach, a referral relationship you want to build. Write down your content pillars for the year, the 3 to 5 topics your content will consistently address. This doesn't need to be a fancy document. A one-page summary is enough. Then quarterly, block 30 minutes every quarter. Ask, has anything significant changed in my practice, my market, or my patient client base? Review your top performing and worst performing content from the past quarter. Identify 1 or 2 pieces to update and 1 or 2 new topics to address. Adjust your content calendar accordingly. Then every month, open Google Analytics. Look at your top pages and traffic sources. Check your review platforms. Review your content ideas. Decide what you're creating or updating next month. That's it, just 20 minutes. Then weekly, you don't have to have a formal meeting. It could be 30 minutes on a Friday morning to write 1 social post, review 1 page of your website, or record a short video answering a common question. Consistency at this level is what compounds over time. You don't need to publish 3 times a week. For most small law firms and medical practices, 1 to 3 well-researched, well-written pieces of content per month are enough to build meaningful online presence over time if it's done consistently and intentionally.
Thank you, Jen. I'd just like to point out that this is actually a modified version of the process that Jen uses to plan services content for all of our clients who have content packages at Foster.
That's right.
Found it to be very effective, right?
Yep.
Okay. Kate and Jessica, do you have any questions?
Sure. I was just wondering, if a firm realizes that their content delves into some specific areas that they don't necessarily want to cover, should they just delete that? Should they redirect those pages? How should they handle that if it's
That's a good question. Typically, we would recommend redirecting those pages. Do you have any specific insight to share onto how to do that, Jessica?
Well, I think it goes into the overall strategy, right? Because, like you said, we don't want to have a bunch of content that's either not attracting the right clients or patients, but we also, need to keep the content fresh. But if it's not aligned with your overall strategy, then it's not worth being there. And I think if it's not even getting any traffic to the page, then it's not worth putting the effort into revamping it. You're better off just better aligning with your strategy to create new content, especially as it keeps changing, right? And I think it's hysterical that we keep going from long form content to shorter form content to back to long form content, and the way that AI just keeps shaking it up, that you really have to just stay engaged with all of the changes in order to know which direction you really should be going in. But I think that's a good point that a lot of people don't even go through their old content. I don't think that people realize that it's worth the time and effort, but it absolutely is in order to rank, right, ladies?
Yes. And typically we would recommend a redirect though, as opposed to just deleting the page and not including anything. Is that correct?
Yes, a redirect. Yeah. Thank you. Good catch.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Fantastic.
Okay. So if anyone has any questions or they'd like to meet with Jen and I individually to discuss content creation in depth, we are always here to help. All you need to do is scan the QR code on this slide to book a 30-minute or a 60-minute strategy session with us.
Fantastic. Thank you.